Hey guys, welcome back. As always, my name is Lazar, and today we're gonna do something totally different. We're gonna offer some feedback from one of my oldest friends in Warframe, a legitimate veteran, and a person who can maintain objectivity. As you guys well know, I do believe in offering feedback in the most concise way as possible, and in the most objective and constructive manner. So, hi Acheron, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Tell me something, buddy. Let's talk about how you got into Warframe and for how long have you been playing this game while I take a look around your fancy orbiter and all whatnot.
I want to say I started playing Warframe about 3 years ago, and a friend of mine sent me a link to the Warframe website, and he's like, "Hey, check this game out. It's free to play, and you get some really cool characters." So I opened up the website, and as soon as I saw Necros, I was like, "Okay, I have to try."
Dude, how
And
many years ago was that? Necros, like four?
well, Necros Prime had just come out, I think, at the time. Was it? Oh my god, I can't even. No, it wasn't 4 years. I'm pretty sure it was around 3 years ago. It was. Ah, God.
It was
Sounds
it
really
was quite
cool.
a while ago. To be honest,
It
that's
was.
how I got into Warframe too. I mean, some of you guys were like, "Come on, dude, play." No, actually, I met you in Warframe, if I remember right. But some of the guys that I was playing Heroes of the Storm with were like, "Dude, try Warframe, try." I was burned out totally on Heroes of the Storm, and everybody said, "Hey, come on, give Warframe a try." And eventually, I did try it, so I kind of got in the same way as you did. But I understand you had it through a referral link, right? They just told me to like make an account.
It was one of those things where he's just like, and the sad thing is, he stopped playing the game after like a couple of weeks of me playing with him, and then was a little disappointed.
Oh, so he
But
dragged you, and he dropped you off, and he was
yeah,
like,
pretty
"Goodbye,
much,
Junior. You're big enough
pretty
now."
much. Yeah, and he's still on my friends list. I think his. Actually, I could probably find out how long I've been playing this game if I still have him on my friends list because he hasn't logged in since then. Um,
Give or take a couple of weeks, I totally get that. Tell me a bit about your experience from the earlier days with Warframe. What did you like? What didn't you like? What you thought was cool? What you thought was difficult to get into, and so on.
honestly, at the time, I had never played a game where you had this level of mobility. And
Mobility, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was hooked on this game as soon as I was going through the tutorial, and I figured out that you could hover in the air, you could latch onto walls, you can run on the walls, and to me that was a completely new experience. Because up to
Because
that
back
point,
then,
like,
right, the mobility in first-person shooters or third-person shooters was rather limited, right? So the whole mobility thing was
oh,
like new, and I think that still is the case today. You don't get this level of articulation and mobility in most FPS, be they first-person or third-person, because I can always bring up Destiny and say, hey, I don't have this level of mobility in Destiny. I want to try to bullet jump like a million times every time I log into that game, just like an example.
oh, I know. It was an adjustment for me too. As soon as I started playing Destiny, I was like, "Oh, I can't bullet jump. This is not cool."
Yeah, this game is horrible. I can't bullet jump. The aim glide was also one of my favorite parts. But anyway, what else did you like while you were getting to know the game? You know, that first impression kind of feeling.
It was just the level of content. Well, when I say content, I mean all the cool things you could get, all the warframes, all the weapons, and
The diversity, the amount of
yeah, so much.
content in it.
And prior to getting into this game, I was actually playing Heroes of the Storm a lot, and
Really?
your videos were what I used to like come up with builds.
Mine?
So as soon as
Yay
I
me!
saw, as soon as I saw your first Warframe video, I was like, oh my god, he's playing Warframe. I need to like get in touch with him, and that's what happened. Because I remember back in the day, you were like, there were two Warframe Heroes of the Storm streamers that I followed, and you were the main one, especially when like there were new heroes coming out, because you always had like these real in-depth videos. And then as soon as I saw your Warframe content, I was like, okay, so he's still doing the same thing, just in Warframe.
Yeah, it
So
was it was a different experience with Warframe because it was honestly a very different community for me. And coming into the Warframe community, I honestly felt very welcomed from just like people that either knew me from my previous content or had never heard of me before. I mean, normally in Warframe, if I do something for Warframe, at the very minimum, 90% of feedback is positive. And I'm talking like the absolute bare minimum 90%. So it was a nice experience and really I felt welcomed. But I get the whole diversity of content thing because when I understood and when I looked through the list and saw how many Warframes I could get, I was like, wow, Amazing, so these are the classes. I could not wrap my head around the fact that these were the classes in some sort of way. Because, again, nobody really uses this kind of recipe like Warframe does, do they?
No, I haven't found a game that's even remotely close to this. And that's what kept me playing this game for so long. Just how many different things you could do, how customizable everything was. It was just on a different level. And it still is. I have not played another game that's got like this level of customizability and that's given me this much enjoyment for this long.
Now, in our clan, Acheron here is known as the fashionista because he basically invests so much time, so much effort into fashion framing each and every single frame that he's got. Tell me something from your point of view, is fashion frame honestly, legitimately, and without making fun, the end game? Because we gotta bring up the end game eventually, right? So we might as well not ignore the topic.
Honestly, I'd say yes. And that's, I mean, we'll get to that point, but that's one of the reasons why I had to take a little break from Warframe here. But yeah, to me, that's what it was, right? Like you'd see all these cool new things coming out, and that would just keep you playing a little longer until you just hit like this little wall you just can't get over sometimes.
I understand. So you felt the need to take a break after how many years?
It's got to be like almost 3 years at this point.
And can you give us like a rough understanding of how many hours you played this game? Oh, come on, Steam has got that thing, or you can look at the in-game thingy, you know, up there at the thing.
So Steam's got it at 3,038 hours.
That's something. You know, I have more than you.
Oh,
About
I'm sure.
50% more.
I'm sure.
And I only played for not even a year and a half.
To be fair, though, this is also a job for you.
Oh yeah, you can totally see it like that, definitely. I mean, there were many times where I logged into Warframe just because I knew I wanted to do something in specific for YouTube, definitely. That's a legitimate claim.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing though, after playing so much time, how much did you invest in Warframe? Did you felt compelled to buy stuff? Did you
No.
feel forced into it? Or what was the reason, or did you spend plat in Warframe? Did you acquire it
I've
with currency and
spent
stuff?
a lot of money in Warframe, and the way I am with games, if I enjoy a game, I have no issue supporting the developer. And for DE to have made this thing, and it can be completely free to play. I know people that have been playing this game for about as long as I have, and at the most, maybe they've spent like $20, and they still get the same level of enjoyment. And that's something that you do not find very often in gaming nowadays, right? Where everyone's just fill their games with microtransactions, and without them, you're not going to get enjoyment out of the game. You're gonna feel
You're
like
not
you're
gonna
missing
get the
out.
full experience unless you
Exactly.
choose to invest in those quote unquote optional microtransactions.
Right. And the most money I've spent on this game is on Tenogen. And again, I don't mind that because I know the way D has that set up, the people that are coming up with these skins are getting a portion of the sales, which is fantastic.
So you're not only supporting the developer, you're also supporting the artist behind the
Of
Tenogen skins
course,
and
I
so on
mean,
and so
the
forth.
amount
Yeah.
of work they've put in on some of these skins, it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I
Warframe,
mean, I didn't buy a whole lot of plat, but I did spend a bit on Tenogen stuff simply because they looked fantastic. I mean, look at the cape you're using right now, the Siandana, the
yeah.
Repala. I mean, it's arguably one of the most popular in game right now.
Oh, I don't doubt it. At one point, it was the most sold item. I'm assuming it's still probably. I mean, just look at this thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it's got those textures up and down. It's just fantastic. Now let's bring it back a little bit to endgame. From my humble point of view, because I gotta counter you a little bit on a certain point. I felt that doing Eidolon hunting about 6 months ago, a year ago, something like that, when I first got into it, felt a little bit like quote unquote endgame because you needed cookie cutter setups, right? You had specific frames that could do a good job, and you had specific weapons with specific builds that could do a good job. That smells like endgame to me, right? And you would grind that quote unquote boss fight, let's call it, yeah, to get specific loot that you could either keep for yourself and get more power out of them, or what you could do is sell them for a pretty large profit, what was back then a pretty large profit. They're still kind of costing, still arcane energies is still the most expensive, but not as much as back then. So for me, I felt that was a sort of endgame for Warframe. Again, I don't want to call it a full endgame, something that resembles an endgame mostly, but it did keep me busy for a good 6 months, I believe.
I mean, I can kind of agree with that. When it was originally introduced, I remember the day the update dropped, and then the first day when we were actually able to fight Eidolons. And back then, Tigress Prime was like the weapon to use for any content. And I remember my friends and I, we went to the plains, we found the Eidolon, and we all had our Tigresses, and we all had like the best weapons at the time, trying to take this thing down. And we were just like, oh my god, what is going on here? We had
Why
no
is the
idea how
Tigress
to...
not one-shotting this guy?
Exactly. We had no idea that this thing can't take any status damage, really. All you need was crit, and back then, like I said, everyone was just running Tigress for like pretty much anything. So that was a really cool experience. Being there, trying to figure out how to take this thing down, and I did it for a while. But the problem for me is it got really repetitive, and the rewards were a little too RNG based, and it just, after a while, I just kind of got tired of it. That
I
was
see.
my
So
problem with
basically,
that.
just like in my case, just like in most people's cases, it's good for a while, but it's not evergreen. Because it can't be evergreen, it's fixed in place. Therefore, you don't really have anywhere else to go after you got everything you needed, and after you maybe made a whole bunch of plat or you stop caring about plat.
Right.
I want to bring it back once again to the end game. Now, I know for a fact that after you kind of stopped playing Warframe, you found another game to occupy your time sometimes, and I believe that one is Destiny, right?
That is correct.
Now, here's one thing which we will not do. We will not start this whole debacle with, oh my god, Warframe or Destiny. Both games are free to play. Try both, play whatever the hell you want. That is totally your option. We're not here to do that. What I'm interested in is from your perspective as a former veteran player, what could have kept you going in Warframe? What kind of additions would you have made to Warframe if you were in a position as the developers? Let's say you could do whatever the hell you wanted with Warframe. Let's just assume. What kind of additions would you have made? What kind of changes? What would you have taken out or put in, and so on and so forth? And by the way, guys, this also goes for the comment section down below. If you guys got any sorts of feedback, that is the point to this style of video that you guys see from me every 2-3 times a year or something like that. Acheron, go.
Honestly, I know it's too much to ask because it is a free-to-play game and D does work really hard, but I feel like the amount of content we get and the amount of drought in between is what really hurt it for me. And I didn't really get into the raids in this game because at the time I was in a clan. I didn't really talk to too many people. The clan was not very active, so trying to get a raid group together was really hard. And I feel like if I had gotten into the raids, I would have seen like a real end game to Warframe. But then when the raids disappeared, around that time is when I joined your clan and found people that were constantly active, and we could have actually tried to, get raid groups together and do stuff like that. To me, the thing that gives a game longevity is activities that you can do with friends that feel rewarding.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
at some point in Warframe, it just that started to go away a little.
Here's the thing about Warframe though. Warframe not only rewards multiplayer, but Warframe also has a very clear and reserved slot, if you will, for single player, right? There's a lot of players that prefer to go about it solo. So that's the thing in Warframe, right? How do you keep the solo players happy and let's say the multiplayers happy, if you will? Because we can't really keep boil this down to new players versus veteran players. There's a lot of talk like, oh my god, you're catering only to new players, or you are only catering to veteran players. I'm not sure, and it's not really my business to call what DE is catering to. Definitely not. But I do feel like most any other player that there comes a certain point when you're simply done with the game. In that sense, you could either draw the line and say, hey, I got a couple of thousand hours out of this game for totally free. Thank you so much. Good luck, Warframe. Right? And you can look at something else. But there's a lot of players that simply want to continue that journey with Warframe. They feel they have a lot of time, and they do have a lot of time invested, and they feel they have achieved so many, and they have so much stuff in Warframe. Letting go of that simply proves not a agreeable proposition, if you will.
I agree with that, and I might be quoting this wrong, but there was a video a while back where somebody interviewed the developers, and Steve said something about how the biggest thing they're worried about is to keep their current player base, but have enough content to draw in more players. And it's really hard to strike that balance, in my opinion, because you want to keep bringing in new players, obviously, but at the same time, you don't want to lose the current player base that you have. So it's a question of what's the focus on. And I know they try to cater to both, but sometimes it doesn't look like that. To
So
me,
basically, a balance must be struck between keeping veteran players engaged into the game and
right.
trying to
But
draw
that's
in new
different.
players as well. I mean, that sounds like a pretty tall order.
I
If
know.
I'm not familiar with the quote that you just used, I have no idea if that's the case or not, but we'll take your word for it. Again, ideally, like if you were to live in an ideal universe, sure, you would be able to do both. But as you said it, you at least don't feel like DE is always doing enough for veteran players. Would that be correct?
I think they're doing the best they can because they're obviously limited to how much content they can produce, right? Like I don't expect every new update to be something where veteran players can be like, oh my god, now I have a reason to go like even further than this. Because that to me just adds more content that's going to be geared towards veterans, and then new players are just kind of going to be turned away. And I think that was one of the problems with Warframe. It's a game that's kind of hard to get into if you're a
I
brand new
still feel
player.
like that. I still feel that the you gotta be this tall to ride Warframe is pretty high.
Right.
To be honest, I
So
mean,
that can
coming into
turn some people away.
Warframe, being a person who is analytical at nature and under, hopefully, a decent mind to understand how things work, I still had a pretty difficult time, and it also took me a long time to actually wrap my head around Warframe. Maybe that's part of Warframe's appeal as it is. I can't say for sure.
I mean, I think that's why a lot of the players that have been playing this game for so long stuck with it, just because of the fact that it felt rewarding until it started to not feel rewarding. You know, like it's a hard game to get into, but once you get into it, you're just like, oh my god, the possibilities are limitless. The amount of things
Absolutely,
I
the
can do in this
flexibility.
game are
Yeah.
just amazing.
And here's the good thing, because there is a good part to not having an actual end game. You have the flexibility to do whatever the hell you want. You can go
Right.
through the entire game in mostly whatever style or fashion you will, no matter the warframe, no matter the weapon, for again, the most part. But again, that is costly on the other side since you don't really have an end game. You don't have cookie cutter setups, you don't have cookie cutter builds, and so on and so forth. Even though there's also a fair bit of complaining on the weapon side of things that they are beginning to be a bit too standard. And I can totally get behind that. I mean, yeah, for the most part, weapon builds are pretty much standard, and the only major changes you see is when the developer changes how specific elements work, right? If they tangle with the IPS, then it works differently. Or if the heat proc now is going to do something totally different, it's going to stack on, it's going to reduce the armor, and so on and so forth. Again, so that
Right.
is the only time when you see huge changes to builds. But again, the flexibility is there. You don't need to use these quote unquote meta options, these meta builds, because basically you can go for the game however you want. And for the hardcore community of Warframe, you could always say, hey, they have endurance runs, but honestly, it doesn't feel like enough. I mean, endurance runs, from my humble point of view, and I'm not saying I'm a hardcore player, definitely not, seems extremely boring. Staying
Oh,
2 hours
I
in this, doing the
totally
same
agree.
thing in the same mission, to me, on a strictly personal level, just feels boring. I would not, if I was a developer, I would not encourage my player base to do something like that, no matter the freaking reward. I would not incentivize such an activity.
I can honestly say in the 3 years that I've played this game, the longest I've stayed in a mission was with you guys doing a Kuva farm, and I think the longest
Oh,
I
that
stayed
I think I remember what you mean.
to me, as soon as I'm in the same mission, doing the same thing for more than 20 minutes, I just want out. Because at one point, it just stops being fun. It just becomes this. repetitive thing you're doing for a reward that just does not seem like it's worth it. And I think that's one of the issues that I still have with Warframe. The fact that the amount of time you put into some of these activities, it doesn't feel like you're getting rewarded for it.
I mean, the actual hassle is not worth it. Here's another opinion that I see quite often in my comment section. Everybody says, hey, the rewards are not good, to not use exactly what the word they use. And I can totally get behind that. I mean, I'm all about incentivizing things for rewards, okay? And I'm a big fan of cosmetics. You don't necessarily need to incentivize something through pure power. Weapons, warframes, mods, or something like that. You can incentivize through cosmetics, skins, helmets, or weapons for skin weapons, or you know those mods like the peculiar bloom one, for example, something like that. You could do something like that and incentivize it like that. Not freaking decorations from Battleketeer. That trend needs to die and never come back. But anyway,
Yeah.
back on topic. What I wanted to ask, since you are actually in a position to talk about Destiny as well, how long have you been playing Destiny?
I've been playing Destiny for just about a year now.
About a year. Have you managed to go through all the available content that Destiny has to offer?
At this point, yeah, I'm pretty.
Basically, what I'm trying to ask you is that give me a few features that you enjoy in Destiny and you see could be somehow adapted to Warframe.
Actually, let me retract what I said. I think it might be almost 2 years because I started playing Destiny when it went free to play for a week on Battle.
I think
Was
that
that
was
about a
about
year
a
ago?
year ago.
Was
Was
that
a
about a
year
year
ago,
ago? Was
right?
that longer?
No, that was a year ago. Something like that.
Okay.
That was back
Then
when
I don't.
Blizzard was still like in the good graces of the community, which it
Okay, so
doesn't
then I don't
happen
have to
anymore.
retract that. The thing that appealed to me about Destiny, mind you, it didn't have the mobility, so that took a little bit of adjusting to, but the gun mechanics in that game are just amazing because it brought back like memories of playing Call of Duty and other FPS games where the guns felt different. The guns felt like they had some oomph to it.
More impactful.
Yes, like for example, the hand cannons in Destiny versus the hand cannons in Warframe are just like a night and day comparison. Just the
On a
way they
personal
felt.
level, again, I have not played Destiny as much as you. I don't think I have 30 hours in Destiny, but I feel that Destiny has a more classic shooter approach when it comes to the gunplay,
They
while
do.
Warframe plays with it a little bit more loose because it needs to play with it a bit more loose. Considering all the crazy kind of weapons you have, laser. Then again, yeah, Destiny has crazy weapons
Destiny
too.
has a lot of crazy weapons as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess weapons could be made to feel more impactful. I'm not talking about the actual impact. We're not talking about the impact in terms of power, okay? Just how they
No,
feel
just
to
the way
play
they
with.
function, the way they
Yeah.
feel in your hand. But I also understand that there are limitations when it comes to the gunplay when you're going from an FPS game to a third-person shooter game. Because, for example, like the amount of recoil that you notice when you're playing an FPS game is going to be really different than what you see in a game like Warframe because of just the way the camera's positioned and stuff like that. And that's understandable. And I don't think Warframe's ever claimed to have like the best gunplay in its
No, but you
genre.
feel like the gunplay could be more impactful in
I
Warframe.
do.
That would be a thing. I mean,
I do.
definitely, if the gameplay itself is more enjoyable, I could see how that would work.
It's funny when we first started playing Destiny. The joke was it kind of felt like you're playing Warframe, but you're always out of energy, right? Because you have these really cool, you have these supers that you just don't have access to at all times. Unlike Warframe, where pretty much you could just spam your forward depending on what kind of build you have.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it took a while to get used to that because one of the things I really enjoyed in Warframe is the customizability of not just the guns, but of the Warframes themselves. Because you could get these really cool builds where you could go through an entire mission without ever having to shoot your gun. You could just kill things with your abilities. And to me, that was amazing because you
Yeah.
got this like superhero kind of feel out of the game. And
Where Destiny is a whole lot more reliant on the actual guns and less on the abilities of the class that you use.
right. But then Destiny introduced a new mechanic into the game when they brought in Shadowkeep, they added these artifacts. and the artifacts are part of a season pass that you just kind of level up as you play. And they unlock these special mods that went into your weapons or went into your armors, and it changed the game. Like to me, it made Destiny feel a lot different than it was because now you could actually start building for your abilities. For example, on the Titan, which you enjoy playing, you could have this build where you're constantly just running around kicking things in the face. And that kind of made me remember like Warframe and being like, okay, so I can have these guns, but I don't actually need to use them because now I have that superhero fantasy back.
I get it. Yeah, totally. I mean, I prefer. Here's the thing. I'm gonna be a little cheeky here. I want it both ways. All right. I want my character to have the ability to absolutely shred the entire mission all by himself without even shooting the gun ever. Right. But I also want the ability to have that fantastic gunplay and that diversity that, let's be honest here, Warframe does have a fantastic gun diversity. But yeah, I think that the argument would like make it a bit more impactful to use. That could definitely be something.
I mean, both games are amazing in their own aspects, and the argument that if you like Warframe, you can't like Destiny, and
No,
if
no,
you like
no,
Destiny, you
no,
can't
no,
like
no.
Warframe,
That is so beyond moronic. I don't even want to tackle a
oh,
subject like that. No, we're not
that,
discussing anything of that level of stupid.
so the thing that Destiny has started doing is with their season passes, they give you a roadmap of what's going to be released. So they release like bits and pieces here and there, and I get it. I'm sure everything's ready to go from day one, but instead of giving us all this content for us to just like grind through really fast and then have nothing to do, they've started to scatter it. And I think Warframe is kind of missing that, where we have these like months of no new content, and then all of a sudden you just get this massive influx of stuff to do, and then as soon as you
This giant wave of content, just like now,
right,
like there's a lot of stuff coming for us all at once. I mean, this has been discussed recently on a larger scale. Yeah, they. I gotta admit that when it comes to digital extremes, they're really terrible at updates. They have made this habit of coming out and saying, "Hey guys, we're doing Melee 3.0. Okay, let's take Melee 3.0, and then no updates for 6 months. No clear dates, no announcements, no anything. You can't do that. You can't do that if you want to be taken seriously as a developer, from my point of view. Again, for what you're describing, it seems that Destiny's devs, Bungie, was it Bungie? I think it was Bungie, has a way more calculated approach when it comes to these updates. And I'm not sure that if a staggered release is better or not. I have no way of knowing that, but that's definitely something to consider. If you get a date now, hey, 6 months from now we're releasing this, then that's something I could hang on to as a player, and I don't get that with Warframe.
no, that's the
I
thing,
get a
right?
whole bunch of maybes and ifs and quiet and dark side, and all of a sudden, boom! Here, guys, have like a whole bunch of content. Catch.
So Destiny started doing like this season thing where every 3 months you get a new season content, and within that season they were scattering like the releases of different things you could do. And again, I'm not saying that that might be like the best thing to do, but it gave you something to do for a little bit. You would grind it, and then as you're getting tired of that grind, oh, you got this new thing that's coming out. Okay, so you can keep grinding this. And once you're getting tired of that, this other new thing is coming out. And I think that's what's helping Destiny now. The fact that they're not they do not update the game as fast as Warframe does. I will give them that because when there's an issue in Warframe, within like a day of the content coming out, people find bugs, and Warframe's like right there on the updates. But that's
Mm-hmm.
not the kind of
Mm-hmm.
updates that made me enjoy playing this game, right? Because it's the content that I want. I don't want the bug fixes. I don't want the rebalancings. I want new stuff to do on a regular basis, and I know it's asking too much. And at some point, you gotta realize, hey, there's only so much the devs can do, and it's not realistic for me to have this expectation of like
Even if
a
the
brand
game
new.
was not free to play, because I honestly don't believe that's an argument. It's free to play, so it's like this. No, I don't believe that. Not one bit. But no game keeps you engaged all the time. There's no
No,
such thing.
no, it's not possible.
It's not. Of course it is possible if you wanna starve to death.
Right.
You will eventually starve. You will run out of money and close your doors. That's how it will go down. You can't do it 24/7, especially not when you promote a certain level of quality. When it comes to the Warframe updates, I don't even know which way to approach this, because what do? Do you release the content faster and a little bit more buggy, or do you hold it back and release it when it's a whole lot more solid and has less issues? Because there will be people who will say, hey, I'll take it buggy, just give it to me already. And there will be players who will say, no, keep it a couple of weeks more, release it when it's less buggy so I can enjoy it. From my humble point of view, I believe that if you release new content that people have been dying for, and it's buggy, and it's messy, and it's broken, then you're ruining the enjoyment of that content.
That's true too.
You're destroying the first experience with that content, and you are gonna leave a permanent sour taste in that player's mouth. That's my 2 cents on it. I mean, but again, there will be plenty of players who will argue the contrary to that. There is a flip side to any coin at the end of the day.
I believe it was the arbitration when it first came out, or
Oh,
maybe
God.
the content right before that,
God.
when it was just a buggy mess.
Oh,
And
I
that's
don't even want to. I mean, on that video that I made, the first impressions on arbitration, which was day one, I still get comments today saying, hey, it's not buggy, it's fixed, it's fine. You can do this to extract. Yeah, but back then, that was the experience, which was the whole bloody point. That's one of the reasons I stayed away from quote-unquote hype content for Warframe. I'm afraid to do it on a certain level. For example, when the tier 4 amp came out, I did a video, I showed, hey, this is better than any other amp we ever had, just to find out, like half an hour later, or I don't know, 2 hours later, that it was bugged. So all my work for that had to be cancelled, and I had to delete the video. Well, I didn't delete it, I set it to private. That stung me as a content creator. Again, this is a personal level. I didn't like that, so I said, okay, sorry Warframe, I can trust you to do hype content for you. Not on this level, at least.
And that brings us back to what you were saying with, do they wait a little bit to release content when it's less buggy, or do they just churn it out just so people have something to play? And when I first tried arbitration, when it was that buggy, it just completely turned me off of it. So even after it got patched and it was working properly, I just had no incentive to go into it, because
you were reticent. Yeah, you were like, you were already bit once, you know, bitten once, twice shy. What is that saying? Something like that.
Yeah. So to me, it was like, oh my god, this is bringing back PTSD of trying to do this thing.
Dude, the widescreen was so horrible.
Oh my god. I was like, I do not want to go through this again, even if it is working perfectly fine.
Well, guys, I think that is about it for today, because I'm running out of megabytes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, my name has been Leyzar. If you like what you saw, like, favorite, share, and subscribe. And we'll catch you in the next one. Say bye-bye, Acheron. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.